like there's a I don't know, there's just like less of a need for like ruggedness of the like that thing that we've been talking about here is sourcing that internal sense of resilience and resource and really becoming that kind of root source of your own worth and okayness. Like if I'm having to fight every day for my like sort of existence and visibility, that it is a very different internal experience than, I come into a classroom and everyone's asked their preferred pronouns. That's just a really different experience.
Okay, so I was saying before we started, I was saying to Camille, this is the second time we've ever had a guest, I believe, in with an HLN team podcast, and I've been wanting to have this conversation with Camille for a year, and last year I didn't have the capacity for it because when you have controversial opinions or beliefs within certain small groups, you can get a lot of backlash, especially groups that have historically and sometimes even currently get like the short end of the stick socially. There's an extra tension around anyone criticizing or differing in opinion. So I understand the tension, I respect it, and I didn't have capacity for it last year, but this year I have a lot of capacity for it. So recently, a couple episodes ago, I had the pleasure of having Grey on to talk about not belonging. And it was so powerful for me because I have, in my personal life, my closest friends are of this ilk. They're of what we call like the old queers or the old trannies. And we have these like incredible connections together and we talk about this stuff, freely. But it's really rare that I speak to somebody who I don't have in my immediate circle who's from this community I share that has like really congruent, even spiritual beliefs around it. It's really rare. And I think I told you, Camille, I know I said to Evan, I was like, when I had Grey on, I was all prepared to have the disagreement.
Oh yeah, you told me. Yeah.
I was like, this bitch is gonna come in and I'm gonna have my pillow, I'm gonna take some breaths, and we're gonna hash it out with love. And I was just endlessly surprised at how much we actually had in common. So I think I wanted to start, Grey, just by asking you, how has it been for you to be so public about something that's this controversial about how you and I have different opinions in the queer community?
I mean, it's been better than I thought. I will say though that the day after, because we had our conversation in the morning, Louise, and then the day after, or the rest of that day, I really had to like take many moments to be like breathe into what it felt like to be that seen and visible in some controversial and, it's not that I said unkind things, but I said an unfiltered. I just like let my opinions and expression be there. And that was it pulled me and expanded me. And so I noticed that when that first happened, then I like felt a little bump come up when I saw, I think you made a post before our podcast came out and I was reading through people's comments. That's when I emailed you and I was like, oh man, like, bro, I saw those comments. I don't know. Like I'm preparing my body for this, but, it's been, overall, it's been really good. And, my platform is a lot smaller than yours. And so I even like have some gratitude for that, for like not being as visible in it. I think it also gives me a little space to be more vocal about it because I'm not dealing with, I don't know, it made me like laugh. Just some of the comments on, I think it was like a real clip, like this person was like accusing us of being these like two straight cis men, like yapping. And I was just like, you literally aren't even listening. Someone commented, it was like, you're missing the point. That's what they're talking about. And
I think my favorite comments were,
I know.
well, okay, so pause a minute because one thing that I was saying before we got in here is my friend Africa Brooke does a lot of work around social filtering and self-censoring and the difference between the two. And what's interesting for me is I've been in that dance the last 3 years, I would say, when I first like burst onto the scene with Fawning, the big hit, that's my number one hit, still playing it, still enjoying the royalties from that, the pennies that come in. But that was like what really got me on the scene was the way I taught Fawning in 2020. And I wasn't being controversial then, because I didn't feel controversial. The thing with me is I don't actively seek controversy. People think I do. I'm like kind of dumb. Like I'm really innocent and have no idea what I'm about to say. And Camille's like, bitch, I saw what you're going to post on Sunday. I'm getting ready. And I'm like, really? So I'm saying that because it's an interesting practice, and this is really what I wanted to talk about here, in addition to the actual topic itself around queerness and not belonging within your already marginalized group, which is
Yes.
such an interesting experience, and I think we all share it in different ways. Um, but what I want to talk about is that pendulation between, because I have capacity for being controversial doesn't mean I'm intentionally controversial.
Right.
For me, it actually means I'm less filtering of myself.
Yeah.
And I loved how you said, Gray, I wasn't unkind, I was unfiltered,
Yeah.
right? I wanted to like have us feel that. And where did that go for you, Camille? I'm curious.
No, that really resonated and stood out to me too, because there is a difference. There's a difference between being unkind and being unfiltered, which sometimes I get called in about too. Like, well, damn, you just put it out there. Well, yeah, I did, and sometimes with being unfiltered, what people can't receive is that I'm not even saying you have to agree with me. I'm saying this is my perspective. This is my experience. And that bothers you, that my experience and my perspective either is different than your own, or sometimes part of the coping mechanism of marginalized communities in particular has been, well, we need to be singing from the same book.
Yep.
And if you stray from that, that's when we're going to fall. We're going to lose what power we have. We have to be cohesive. And by cohesive, that means we have to have consensus in order for us to make any progress. And if you stray from that narrative, you are going to bring us down. And I can understand the need for cohesion, but I don't think cohesion necessarily means consensus or assimilation, which is interesting for marginalized communities because that's what they've been taught to, what they've been fighting against is assimilating, yet they then internalize assimilation as a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Drop the mic, I'm done. Y'all have fun.
We're gonna see you later.
That's it.
Go enjoy your life. No, that was it. That's really it. That's what lights me up, because what I wrote on my, and those of you listening have no idea what we've been talking about. You might want to go back a few episodes to the Grey Doolin episode around trans people don't need to belong. And the idea around it is when you're in a marginalized group and you grow up in that group, and I find this to be actually the most oppressive idea, is the mainstream commercializes the marginalized identity and then sells you a story that you're a victim. And I'm like, do you realize how we're getting co-opted by the mainstream? Because the queer people I grew up with, the ones that really literally saved my life, not even like figuratively, but actually saved me from suicide, it was the most non-victim mentality I'd ever witnessed in my life. I get teary-eyed just thinking about it, because these were people who actually had been victimized. These were men in the 50s who were thrown in jail for like kissing someone in a urinal or like in a park bench. They couldn't be publicly homosexual and jailed, and then came out of that experience without internalizing that. And I thought, I want what you're having. I want this experience of all these horrible things have happened to you, yet your heart is so open and you're not scared. Like, teach me that. So it has shocked me in the last decade how the safer, comparatively speaking, not more tolerated, even though I think there is more tolerance, but the safer a community has gotten relatively. There's a privilege that emerges from that safety. And then it's almost like people are looking for the idea of being victim where they're not. And that's where I have a very low threshold, because I've come from experiences where I was victimized for having an intersex body. I've seen my trans friends be truly victimized by being transsexuals and people realizing because they didn't pass, like serious actual harm and oppression done to someone's body. Yet we still emerge with less of an authoritarian way of relating to people. So that piece about we then internalize the oppressive narrative and become the oppressor to each other's ideas because we're so afraid of being oppressed again. It's an interesting cycle.
All right, I'm just going to put it out there. So this will be my hot take. What you just said for me speaks to what I'm noticing over the last, particularly 2 or 3 years, coming from several marginalized communities, that this is the worst it's ever been. I do not subscribe or believe that narrative. I don't think it's a helpful narrative. I do think this is a time in our history where we get to be vocal, where we get to say, no, that's some bullshit, where we get to say, no, I won't be treated that way. But I don't think it's helpful for us to say this is the worst it's ever been, and it's because of X, Y, Z. Let's face it, if you're a part of a marginalized group, that group has been marginalized long before you were born, long before
Mhm.
you got here. Yeah, that's just what came up for me as I heard you speaking on that.
And I think, Luis, that ties in for me, Camille, to your point, Luis, about, the kind of relative safety that has come in. I think even like the passing or the legalization of same-sex marriage when that happened, right? The kind of more visibility increase of trans and non-binary folks. Yeah, the tolerance, right? The pride sections in Target, right? It does. It's like this sense of the
Mhm.
world is more accepting of me now. And it's interesting what our bodies do with that, right? If we talk from like a safety level, that is this, we internalize that as, well, now I'm safer. And then, the Trump administration comes in and you can't get your passport, all the things, and suddenly those are taken away again. But I feel like, Camille, to your point, it's like the worst it's been is relative to whatever progress you feel like we made. Like, also, like, did you fall asleep on the job there? Like, like, then you began kind of what's sort like outsourcing that. Like, there's that outsourcing of safety. It's like, well, now all these external things are happening, so now my body can calm down. Where then I'm going to
Right.
forget about the kind of the work, which is like, how do I still find my own sense of worth internally to say, like, I'm worthy whether or not my passport reflects my my current gender expression or identity, or the sex that I was born with.
That's right. And when you were saying that, I was thinking, I think that that's where I come from with my history around the queer elders and mentors that really helped me through my teen years, my later mid to late teen years. This was this was pre-gay marriage. This was like currently pro-gay bashing still. Like this was not a political arena or culture where we were suddenly safe and people liked us. It was quite the opposite,
Yeah.
especially in the Pennsylvania town I grew up with, which was highly evangelical and very Catholic. It was extremely homophobic, extremely racist. And I come from, a mixed Puerto Rican household and family, and also I'm bisexual and all my friends are gay. And so it's like, wow, like I remember the feeling of just driving in a car somewhere and people in trucks watching us and following us. And we still didn't feel like victims. I'm like, what? So when I'm in this place, and what this is that oh, in my day when I was queer, like that's really what we're doing now. So we've become those bitches.
Uh,
Just,
we
I
are
know
there.
we are that
Music's
we
not like it used to be.
the
And yes, we
marginalization
we
is
go
not
to
like it
bed at
was in my
8
day.
p.m.
Wait, what was that,
That's
Gray?
and we go to bed at 8 p.m. too.
We do.
Yeah, so it's like I have this horrible nostalgia for the 90s marginalization. It was like because there was something about the culture was not as tolerant, at least the one I
Yeah.
grew up in. There were way more instances of gay hatred, queer hatred. Trans people weren't even no one even talked about them. Like they only
Yeah.
existed when the sun went down for real, in
Yeah.
my community. Yet no one had this victim mentality. So I find this interesting as it relates to all people, not just marginalized groups. I have this like kind of loose theory that as a culture, as a species rather, we've come from this lineage, these ancestors that were highly adrenalized to survive. And then we land in these societies that are relatively safer than any of our ancestors had experienced, if we're lucky, right? And those of us speaking are we don't know what to do with that charge. Like that charge is still in these bodies. And it's like, well, can I just sit here and enjoy this? Because one generation ago, right, I couldn't. So when I see someone completely fall apart and become aggressive because someone uses the wrong pronouns by mistake, not even aggressively, it's an interesting kind of margin, especially of capacity. It gives me a sense of maybe what this is the hardest thing this person's ever had to experience on their journey. And when I say like in our day, in my day, it was like, oh my God, I wish they just called me a girl. That would have been so much easier than the kind of harm that was inflicted on my body and like the endless hatred and bullying. And so I'm saying that because there's something beautiful about listening to trans and queer elders and marginalized elders. They went through things we can never fathom. And a lot of them didn't quite internalize the victim mentality because they didn't have that's all they had, right? To keep them sane were each other's liberation and freedom within their own spaces. They didn't even have the opportunity to find external safety. And Camille and I used to talk about this. I used to get a lot of people getting really mad at me early on Instagram, especially, but even in our courses, when they would say, finding safety in yourself, easy for you to say you're a cis white
Yeah.
guy, right? And
Yeah.
I would be like, but It's actually the black people of the 60s that told me that. It wasn't like cis white guys that told me how to find safety in myself. It was people that had zero chance of
Yeah.
ever finding social safety that had to, cultivate it within themselves.
Yeah.
I wonder where you two go with that.
Uh, I mean, yeah, I gotta agree. In terms, at least for me, it's been this idea of like, oh well, yeah, it's easy for a white guy to have safety within himself because you don't have to deal with marginalization. Um, Part of, at least in my experience, of navigating massive, massive amounts of marginalization or oppression has been the knowing of how this group of people sees or treats me is no bearing or reflection on who I am as a person. Like it kind of goes back, not that it's a cliche, because I actually do believe it, but this idea, particularly as it relates to the institution of slavery, like slavery is a mindset,
Mm.
in that I can reflect on, or when I've read slave narratives, people who were enslaved but had a sense of themselves that yes, they were enslaved, but they weren't slaves themselves, or they knew that wasn't who they were. And conversely, for me, it was really interesting to find out that part of my trauma response, part of really seeking safety outside of myself in various ways, was a form of slavery. This belief that I could not be safe outside of a system that was rooted or led by large corporations that were led by older white men. That was more of a form of slavery, how I saw myself, what I was and wasn't capable of, more so than like literal chains on my wrist or so. So yeah, like to, and I think that's part of why I love some of my identities, like being of African descent, being a woman, being Muslim, that yeah, like out of that you are kind of forced to like sit with yourself and say like, oh, am I this horrible thing that that these folks outside of me are saying I am? Or can I find within myself to say the part that says, bitch, no, you're amazing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And um, when people sort of come at me with that privilege thing, I'm white, I'm like cis male passing, and it's like, but if you look at my story, like I've experienced like if you read a textbook on like mental health challenges and adversity for trans folks, like I've experienced it, like abuse of all kinds, suicidality, addiction, like literally whatever is in the textbook, like I have experienced it. And that's not like a pull myself up by my bootstraps, but it's like, well, one, I've transmuted some shit in my life. And well, right, because it's felt like the invitation. But for me, it speaks, Luis, to the thing about this, like the hardest thing people have had to experience. And so if, we're coming up to the 90s in a different time where we had different experiences of harm. And so we've, processed those and moved those out. Like for me, the conversation now around, well, if someone used the wrong pronouns, the hardest thing, again, like the conversation seems to be about all these systems externally that need to change. And again, I'm just not interested in that conversation. Like if that's the thing that's causing you the trigger, I'm much more interested in what you do with how that how that comes up in your body. Like let's build the resilience if the resilience isn't there. Let's resource if the resource isn't there. But it's just this automatic like something outside of me is doing this to me and that is bad. Like that's the like distillation of what it is, rather than lots of external things happened to me that were bad and like that's not my story. Like, and I had to do, like, it's not like I was born in some like positive mindset to get here. It's like, right, I journeyed to get to this place, which means you also can too. So let's have that conversation about what it means to be born into this marginalized identity and to do something different with it,
When you're speaking, I'm thinking of a friend of mine. Her name's Chelsea. She's a transsexual woman. She's one of the first I ever had on my podcast very early on in 2020. You can go back and listen to it. I think the episode's called The Roots of the Transgender Movement. She was friends and she housed Sylvia Rivera. Like she's the OG. And Chelsea, I remember in the episode said, Luis, the thing about you that makes us family is when I look into your eyes, I have a sense of everything you've been through, yet somehow your heart is still open. And that's like the common denominator for me that really attracts me to people. I don't actually care about your identity. I'm so fascinated by people who went through some kind of shit and came out with an open heart. because of what you just said about transmuting. Like you've transmuted this. And there's something when you're talking, Camille talks about this a lot about the external need for the society or the system to change. And I'll hold my breath until it does. And what's interesting in that is actually giving a lot of energy and devotion to supremacy culture itself when that's what you're doing. When you're so devoted on watching this culture that's been the one in power for so long, and really saying everything you do affects me. Like it's like this literal fetish toward this person that you're trying to decolonize from. Whereas to me, like if we're using these terms decolonial and such, the more decolonial thing for me is what you just said. Like, what seed do I plant in the soils in my body instead of waiting for you to plant it for me? Because they might never plant the seed, probably won't ever plant the seed. If they
No.
plant it, it's a photo op. They're doing it for the photo. They're not watering that shit. They're planting it. They're smiling. They're going to McDonald's. And so for me, it's like we have to plant that seed, and that's what I was infused with growing up. It was same with my immigrant grandfather. Infused me with that notion. So this idea that because of what I've been through or how I appear in the world means 100% I have everything stacked against me, and that gives me license to be cruel to people. I just can't get with that. And so this piece around, the queer community is what brought this in. This, I shouldn't say the queer community, but this kind of new emergence of the queer community, which is what culturally relevant for everybody. There's always a new emergence every decade or two of some kind of community. It changes. Some of us are bitter about it. Some of us go with it. Some of us, make podcasts about it, throw shade at it, and simultaneously thank it. But I guess I'm saying this because the real practice under all this for me is how do we stay connected to ourselves even in the face of relational turbulence. And in this case, the relational turbulence I'm speaking of is, wow, a community I found so much safety in identifying and belonging with, I'm the marginalized one within that community. How strange. I thought we were here for the marginalized. Like, where did it shift? What's going on? Why is speaking to a detransitioner suddenly transphobic of me? Like they're one of the most marginalized groups under the queer acronym, the LGBT. They deserve a voice too. And you had said it so beautifully, Gray. You're like, well, if that offends or scares someone, it's because they haven't questioned their own identity, right? So it's pressing against that.
Yep.
So I'm throwing all this out just because when you say these things publicly, you have a rupture, which I've had many from saying these things publicly, but you also have this incredible integrity that emerges of I'm safe even though people think I'm a transphobe. And I loved the comments from the detransitioner one I did where they would say, please have a trans person on your podcast who actually loved their transition. I said, bitch, they're coming and you, I don't know if you're ready for it, but their name is Gray. We'll be here on Sunday and let them tell you how they feel.
Exactly.
That was not the fantasy they had in mind. But, so it's interesting how we're actually looking for people to agree with us instead of can we have capacity to disagree, but also be in the same community.
Right.
I'm always just like, isn't that the community you want to be in? Right? Again, like that's the queerest of the queer right there, which is to be able to be in and amongst people who like think and feel vastly different than you do. I just like that's the community that I want. There's diversity within that. And for me, which, relationships really, they're a spiritual path. Like push up against my edges. Help me deepen and grow, like show me where I'm wrong. Let me be humbled like over and over. That's like, humility is so sexy to me. I love when I'm wrong. It's like, thank God,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
that we can like exist in that together. Like that's, I talk about embodied intimacy, and that to me, like, that's the like root of just being in the mess together. Like that's intimate. Like there it is,
I love that you said that piece about being wrong, because something that was really clear for me in this whole, like I was saying, I kind of got sidetracked, but the last 3 years, I've been way more public about things that cause rupture than I would have before. But part of that is I'm not trying to assert myself as an authority. People give me that power, which I don't ask for or say I have. what I'm trying to do is just say, can I just express myself whether I'm right or wrong?
Yeah.
Like, I don't really care about being right or wrong. I care about not shutting down because I'm scared of people.
Right.
And if I'm afraid of the very people I call my community, is it a community?
Right. Right. Well, I
No.
mean, that idea of a community, it's still, how do I say this? Both inside and outside. So one of the things, if you're part of a marginalized community that you try to espouse or you're trying to teach other people, is like, there's so much diversity within this community. There's not just one Black voice. There's not just one woman's voice. Please understand that. But then when you have a different voice within that community, no, that's the wrong voice. But you just told them there wasn't just one voice in the Black community or the woman's community. Help me understand. And so it's that idea of, yeah, I have capacity for diversity, but it has to be this particular type of diversity or this particular type of difference. Let's sit with that. So why does this now become uncomfortable? So you can see, just like the example you gave, which I love, you can see when somebody transitions and that triggers somebody, you can see that, they're not comfortable in their own identity, their sexuality, their gender identity, whatever it may be. But if they detransition and that triggers you, are you then able to see that that is present within you as well? Maybe not. And that's what I think a lot of people don't want to be with. Like in my experience with diversity, equity, and inclusion work, it is much easier to look at somebody else and say, yeah, you need to get your shit together. Don't be racist. Don't be homophobic. Don't be Islamophobic. Here are the things you need to do, rather than really sitting with, what are the things in me that I don't have capacity for? What are the areas of difference and disagreement that not only make me uncomfortable, but they feel threatening because I probably still don't have a sense of who I am?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that and maybe shame. Like I want to presence shame for a minute because, Camille, also I had like a brief stint in career of doing DEI trainings and my role too around trans, especially trans competence. And and Luis and I talked about this in our episode. I feel like, when people come in and say, be an ally to trans folks or be anti-racist, there's this, I think it brings up shame for people. I'm doing it wrong, and so I'm also curious about, yes, maybe the fragility of people's identities and having the capacity to explore that, but also what do they think what's the meaning they make about themselves? Because I'm just so curious about the role of shame in that. It's, I don't know. That's just what came out. I can just feel it. It's this sort of poignancy where it's this thing pushes against me. Maybe I have a negative opinion about trans people too. What does that mean about me as a trans person, right? It's so, right, the threat is so deep there about a lack of belonging. You can't even express, I see in these trans forums, especially when people are asking about dating or whatever, to say I'm not attracted to trans women, right? Automatically makes you a transphobe, and it's yo, right. I literally just am not attracted to them. Right. But it's the policing is so intense. It's I don't know what I can and can't say anymore. And so it's this stifling. And again, you can't belong if you're authentically, it's not community. It's this conditional, it's just a bunch of, it's puppetry, we're all they're saying the things the
right things.
Say. Exactly.
Reciting the script. Yeah.
Exactly.
You see the things we can say, and we'll all just keep repeating it. And, I've talked about this on an earlier podcast, but for me, the pendulum has just swung in terms of who is or isn't considered conservative. So for me, conservative just means I can't hold a lot. And so there's one realm of conservatism that we're all really familiar with, but I do feel quote unquote liberal in some spaces have become conservative in their own right, in that there's only certain things you can say or do, and anything outside of that isn't okay, which is not liberal. So now you have actually transitioned into the very thing that you found stifling.
Yeah. Well, it's rigid. It's dogmatic.
Well,
it's fundamentalist.
When you say rigid, I think that's when I think of capacity and rigidity. I think that's an interesting connection because in our membership space, and this very well from being in it over the years, Camille and I would often say to people, especially early on, I would say especially the first year, I didn't call it a community at first.
No.
I only started calling it a community very recently because I have seen people go through rupture with each other. I've seen people say unpopular opinions and trigger people. And I've seen that turn into incredibly thoughtful discussions. And we've had these tending to rupture sessions, which are like my version of somatic conflict resolution. And to see people go in disliking each other or afraid of each other and leaving like crying and wanting to hold each other. Now we're a community, because I don't call it a community until rupture is able to be held, until difference is able to be tolerated. If there isn't a toleration of difference, for me, it is a cult. And growing up Catholic, it was so clear, you couldn't have any question of faith or people freaked out. And I remember my family being really like truly scared of people who questioned faith. They saw them as scary, dangerous people. And I was always questioning my faith, but I never said it out loud. So I'd be in the back seat and my aunt and my mom would be talking and be like, aren't people that don't believe in God aren't they the scariest? Like, I would never want to be around them. I'm like holding my rosary in the back, like, shit, is this, whispering into my rosary. So it's like, I remember that feeling even growing up of, oh, there's no space to question how you feel, or people are going to cancel you essentially. And so that's very cult-like mentality and behavior. And I find myself being so basic bitch critical about the queer community because it's the last one I expected to be basic bitch in their behavior. Wow. So for me, there's like a massive amount of disappointment as well as confusion that I'm constantly working through. And it's mostly dissipating, especially the more I talk about it, it alleviates it. I'm not like preserving it and, holding it. But it's the last group I was ever part of that I thought, oh yeah, we're going to be just like everybody else. Like I had thought queerness transcended everything that was the norm. Yeah, exactly. And so it's been amazing to watch. Oh, we all do it too. Like we are just as basic.
And here, I'll give you my theory as to why that's the case, or why the pattern emerged differently. And for listeners out there, I am not queer. I'm not proposing to speak on behalf of the queer community. This is just my observation as a human being, anthropologist, sociologist, is that the difference between queer folks and other marginalized communities is that with most other marginalized groups, there was always like an awareness of the group. The group was, for lack of a better term, was out. Like you were a woman, you were Black. Sometimes you might be able to pass, or you were of a different religion if you weren't a Christian or specifically Protestant. Like there was some awareness of the group, and so the group was somewhat by de facto slightly basic. By which I mean there were different like opinions within it. And I say all that to say, to go back to your point about like 90s marginalization, for me specifically 90s queer marginalization was very unique. And if you want to go like 70s, 80s as well, is because those who were out were making a very clear choice. Like you had to have some sort of like self. I don't know who you were, like what God put in you that just said, yeah, I know all the shit that can go down, and this is who I am. But now, because there is more, not to say that marginalization has gone away, but because there is more safety, now like everybody, not everybody, but there's
kind of.
You get to be queer. So now everybody gets to be queer. You don't have that threshold of like, oh, I really got to know myself. And so hence the basicness starts to come in and it feels more abrupt, or at least again, my perception or observation of the evolution of the community.
I couldn't agree more with that. What do you think, Gray? As a card carrying queer,
yes,
give me your input.
And I'm going to speak for all trans people here. Just so. I wrote a post recently about similarly like queer community saving my life at points, and there was this time when I was getting my master's degree in Auburn, Alabama. This was in the deep South. It was early 20s, so I was still identifying as a lesbian. I hadn't like come back out yet as trans. But the climate there, again, deep South, deeply conservative, deeply homophobic. But we came together in this we started this graduate and professional student group, and we were just so active and vocal. We like set up on the, like the quad or whatever it was. Like we worked with the university to get gender identity and gender expression included in the non-discrimination policy. It was like activism. And you're right, Camille, I think to your point, like it was that was a choice, like to be openly out in the deep South where like that hyper masculinity, you know, and I remember what it felt like to feel unsafe there. Like even like and being read as a woman and like as a lesbian woman, like it was scary, but there was something, again, speaking to this, like, I don't know, for me, like there wasn't a choice though. And it was that thing in the way that we came together in our queerness as this group, like that creates a level of community and kind of survival that I just don't experience that anymore in the current vibe. Like it just was like, these are my people. And like, we needed each other in a different way to be that level of out and vocal.
So I have something controversial to say.
Oh, just one. Okay.
Yeah.
Just starting now. Is it possible, Grey, that is because we're safe now? Because there really isn't a threat to existence?
I mean, I think some people would argue with you on that. Yeah.
I'm asking you, girl. I'm asking you, girl, boy, bitch. I'm not asking that.
Yes.
Like, what do you think?
I think it goes back to what I named earlier, where I wouldn't call it complacency, but I do think in that level of safety, then you begin to look outside of yourself because it isn't necessary as much anymore to find that internal strength within. You know, it's like, oh, now like my mom, there's a higher chance my mom might love and accept me. Like there's just, yeah, I think there are more opportunities for visibility and acceptance, not for everyone, but I don't know, there's just like less of a need for like ruggedness of the like that thing that we've been talking about here is sourcing that internal sense of resilience and resource and really becoming that kind of root source of your own worth and okayness. Like if I'm having to fight every day for my like sort of existence and visibility, it's a very different internal experience than, you know, I come into a classroom and everyone's asked their preferred pronouns. That's just a really different experience.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, because I was thinking what Camille was just saying about, you know, your philosophy on queerness and the difference than other marginalized groups and the difference between now. And I think a big part of what it's become for me that's different is it's identity based now. And it used to be sexuality or body based then. So you were either born into an intersex body. You didn't identify as intersex. Like, I'm intersex, my biology is, right? No question, over. Or I'm attracted to boys. I'm not identifying as a homosexual. Like, I want cock to be like straight up about it. You know, it's like
yes.
My friends and I, my gay friends and I, and yes. I'm gonna say the F word. We call each other faggots all the time, and we're always like, "How many dicks do you have to suck till you can call each other faggots?" like what? Like, who decides this? Because like current people get really upset with that's when we do that. But anyway, that's a side note.
I think the answer is 0. You can be a fag all you want, man.
For you, yes. Camille's like, I'm pulling out of this one.
No, I'm not gonna say. I'm
pulling over here. but it's like, I think it's interesting how it's identity based now. So to Camille's point, I can put on nail polish and be a heterosexual man and be queer because it's become a fashion statement, which. Fine. Like I'm saying, like, let things evolve. I'm truly fine with things evolving. I think it's actually really important that these things become part of the mainstream and work themselves out and dilute. However, the kind of preciousness that comes with your nail polish, I just can't pretend I agree with that.
I don't think that's that controversial.
Yeah. What about the survey for being allowed to use the F word?
Oh, well, yeah, that.
Well, I just want to know that, like, once you start racking up the cocks, like, is there like an elevated fag status or like?
No, it's fag or the hard T. It's like you have to earn that hard T. You're not allowed. Not anyone can use the hard T. Nope. No, I stand by it. Fag is like sweet. The hard T, you have to earn that.
That's like 20 plus.
That hi hat. You got to earn that hi hat. Does this come to you? What'd you say?
So you learn something new every day.
Camille. Maybe like the best conversation I've ever had.
Everyone listening, this is what it means to be an ally. Yeah. This is how you want to become an ally right here. We're teaching you. We're telling you how it works.
Seriously, like forget about my pronouns. Let's just like get on the cock scale together, you know?
So Save us from this conversation.
That's true. I mean, as much as we're laughing about it, like I truly believe like that's what it means to be an ally. Like to again, circumvent like what is my capacity for difference? Can I sit here and have a conversation about cops and I'll be like, what? Oh my God, and like or lose my shit, or versus tell me what microaggressions I should and shouldn't do, or
Right.
what I'm supposed to say. Again,
Right.
that's dissociative. What I want you to do is be able to be present with me
Totally.
as I am, and I am seeking to do the same with you, to be present with you
Yes.
exactly as you are.
Yes.
Mm.
I love that. And I think that's a little of the impetus behind like some thirst traps that I post on my account, because it is like, for me, it's about embodiment, but also like, right, like this is what it means to be in my sphere. Like I think my body's hot and I like love to be present in it, and like my like sexuality is intertwined with my life force and aliveness. So like, right, I don't need you to use the right, like I love your point, Camille. Like can you just be present, and like what does it bring up in your body? How's your body relating to my body? Like just like, right, can we just be present in this together rather than needing to like know the right language, or how do I call myself, or like if I find you attractive, what does that mean about me? I don't know. That like you have life force in your body, like get it. Like I don't know. Like that's
It's
but
really that simple.
like truly, right. So I think in the DEI, the kind of allyship talks, it's right. Can we just be with one another as we are,
Yeah, I'm feeling, I think one thing that is so important, and Camille, we have to find a way to teach it even better and more specifically, a course eventually or something just on this. But the distinguishing between difference and harm, right? Like
Yeah.
the distinguishing between controversial opinion and harm.
Mhm.
I was thinking we were saying earlier, Gray, I forget exactly what it was you said, but it brought up the situation where I'll have people write me DMs like all year long telling me my silence on a certain topic is violence. Then I'll talk about it and then they'll DM me, your words are harmful.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, my
You
silence
said
or
the wrong
violence,
thing.
my expression is harm. And so I think this idea of I don't agree, or I said it differently, or I see it differently being immediately equated with harm is kind of what you were getting at about the shame that comes up in DEI spaces.
Yeah.
And you hold this really well, Camille. This I've said since the get-go, and I'll say it again. Camille is the Noah's Ark for DEI. She is the DEI Noah's Ark, because that ship went down because of these people not being able to have capacity for difference.
Yeah.
And Camille and I, we've sat in meetings with big corporations having these massive ruptures because of DEI. They weren't open to this at all, because the guidelines of what you should say and not say are really important, because the real fear is sensation. It's like if we create too much sensation, something must be going wrong. Like if you get flushed in your chest or your face, or you get triggered, or you get worried or overwhelmed. And the leaning into sensation and teaching people, which is, I guess, really what we do anyway in our work, teaching people sensation is your aliveness. If someone says something that offends you or overwhelms you, that's how alive you are. It doesn't mean you're actually being attacked. It means there's something big emerging for you to meet.
Yeah.
And I guess I say that kind of to pose a question to both of you in your own places. You talked before, Camille, how like you'll offend Muslims with your beliefs and the way you live, or you're more of a liberal Muslim and a conservative Muslim, for lack of better terms. How do you two navigate being in groups of people who you're supposed to connect with because you have shared identity and maybe even history, but you're very different in opinion? How do you connect to yourself? How do you feel that sense of I'm not in danger even if I upset them, or I'm not in danger if they say something that is overwhelming or upsetting to me? I think people listening could really love to hear an actual, like, how do you hold that in yourself when it's coming up?
Well, for me, it really takes me back to even when I first started doing DEI work, and people would ask certain questions or say certain things, and usually they were actually straight white dudes who might say something, and then afterwards, either women or people of color or queer folks would come up. Oh my gosh, I can't! How did you stay so calm when they asked you that question? Well, I didn't have the wording for it at the time, but there was just this awareness, like two things. One, ain't shit gonna happen. Like I'm at work. There's only they can only get so disrespectful because I got witnesses. And if nothing else, I can sue and get a lot of money. But two, more important, um, I realized it didn't have anything to do with me.
Mm.
Like whatever they were feeling, whatever they were experiencing, the vitriol that came up at something I was proposing had nothing to do with me or my being, my existence. That was in them with or without me. I just happened to say something or put something in front of them that brought it to the forefront. And so whether it's with a straight white dude or someone in my community, same. Like now, what I really notice or what I find funny is if I say something, sort of like how you were bringing up, Louise. Well, it's okay for you to talk about finding safety in yourself. You're a straight white dude. Okay, well, Camille's sitting here talking about finding safety in herself. Well, yeah, but she's light skinned and she's middle class. She doesn't really like. You can always there's always now this like
Totally.
no, it's because of this privilege. Like
Yep.
even if I talk about as a fat woman, yeah, you're fat, but you're not that fat. You can't really. Like, there's always this go to. I shouldn't say always, but I'm noticing a more of a trend of folks. Well, if I disagree with you, it's because you're speaking from your place of privilege, so it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you have to say. And again, it has nothing to do with me. It's a signal to me like, oh, you can't stand, literally, you cannot hold a different perspective, a different experience. And so you have to dismiss it because of some form of privilege.
But even when you said you can't stand, my mind was saying you can't stand how much power you have.
Mm.
Like I'm showing you what it means to have power, and you
Mhm.
can't accept that power. So you need a
Mhm.
story that says you're not allowed to touch it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because I've done it. I've done it.
Uh,
I'm like, well, easy for you.
Same.
You weren't born intersex.
Mm-hmm.
Easy for you. You didn't have to hide your body for 15 years. Like I did that for years until I realized,
Mm-hmm.
what if I stopped saying that? Who would I be as a person, right?
Yeah.
Great. Where'd that go for you?
Yeah, well, first I just want to say, like, same with you. Like, there used to, like teachers and group spaces I couldn't be in because either they like weren't trans friendly or I didn't feel included, or their perceived privilege that I had of them was so triggering for me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel seen at all in my trauma, and then work through that and realize that I was like, oh, this was about me. But I mean, similar to Camille. Um, Same around recognizing that it's not mine, and like I want a name for both myself and my like lineage of healing and the people here, but like I also had to feel a lot of times where it did feel personal. Like I like grieved a lot, or like there were parts of me that like did feel broken, or parts that I hated that when someone would say something, it absolutely triggered. But again, back to our conversation about invitation, I think my capacity to do this work is because I have sat with like every single part of me that has believed the things that these people have said, that are saying or have said. And I have like loved them into the place where like, even if they get a little like, just like touched, like there's that familiar thing, there's more capacity now, and I'm more like that kind of like sense of self to hold those parts now. But like a lot of feelings and a lot of like, oh, like that's really painful to like be with the part that actually calls up in me. Um, which,
When you said the part that believes it, that's why I felt like a little zip in my heart, a
yeah,
little zap, because that's what it is. I've
yeah,
said before that the biggest boundary violation is when I believe your painful story about me. And
yes,
so if I think you think my body's disgusting, it only hurts if I agree with you.
yes,
Because I've been in spaces where people make fun of my body after I found it to be lovely, my
yep,
body, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't bother me anymore. Like, that's a
yep,
shame you can't think I'm as hot as I think I am.
yeah,
you know, but it's like, but initially, oh my goodness, if there was
yeah,
one thing about how I looked, I would completely fall apart.
yeah,
So I think even saying that, I have a lot of empathy when I see people literally fall to the ground crying, which I've seen
Mm.
when they're misgendered
yeah,
or the incorrect pronoun is used. And I have a lot of empathy for it. I think my intolerance isn't you shouldn't be upset. My intolerance is don't give them your power.
yeah,
Like be upset, grieve that thing that misgendering is bringing up in you. Like I will hold you in that, but I
yes,
can't agree with you that it's all because of what they just said. Someone who doesn't even know you is bringing you to your knees. Like that's something in you. And so I'm saying all this because I know I'm sure all of us agree with the idea of people should grieve and feel pain and be embarrassed and humility and feel like they're not being justified in things. It's just not to attach all that to the other individual. It's bringing it up in you. right? But investigate that in yourself.
Well, it will never be like quelled. Like no one literally can make it better for you. I think that's the like even if I leave a boss that's transphobic or doesn't use my pronouns, if I don't heal whatever that triggers in myself, I'm gonna walk into the exact same situation, a different form. That's gonna be an invitation to like that. Those parts of us want to be healed. That's the like we're on this integrative path.
Hmm.
These are like we want to come back to wholeness. You know.
Even you saying that, it makes me think of a lot of my old transsexual friends. And I've been very openly critical about the urgency model of transitioning with kids compared to how it used to be. And one of the things that just came up when you said that I think is so powerful that we don't talk about enough is it used to be that you had to socially transition for a year or two before you could even be put on hormones at all. So you had to live as the opposite sex while still obviously being the sex you were born in if you weren't naturally passing. And I'm thinking of my one friend in particular who did that. And he was like, when, born biologically female, and when he was seen as a lesbian and living as one, and then started getting more butch. Everyone just saw like this butch lesbian. And I know you have a special place in your heart for the dyke days. The dyke days are never over at Gray's house. But what really is special about him to this day, he hasn't been misgendered in 15 years. He's so incredibly passing, which is, I think, to be fair, easier for transsexual men. Testosterone builds the body.
Yeah.
So when you're biologically male, you've already had the building. It's harder to take it off without surgery. All that to say, that year or two of socially transitioning is a massive humility walk. It is like a burning hot coal walk, which I'm sure you know very well, of constantly being misgendered, of constantly being, and to be fair to people that don't know it, being properly gendered because they're seeing your biological sex, they don't know you're trans. They're being progressive as far as they know because they're saying, hey, ma'am, even though you're wearing men's clothing, that's kind of progressive. You think about it. So I'm saying all that because to live through that and realize, okay, I did 2 years of public humiliation to connect to my integrity. He's fucking untouchable now. Like he hasn't had the experience of urgently transitioning, so he didn't have to feel discomfort. And similar to you, Camille, with DEI and the guidelines prevent discomfort. But it is in the discomfort, isn't it, that we get this incredible resilience toward things.
Yes, it's the reason my tagline for my DEI work is let's get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like the intent is not to like the whole intent of the guidelines and what to say, what not to say, putting in these rules is just another form of dissociation. I don't want to be with the discomfort. So just let's usher in a new set of rules that we have to follow. But for me, that's not diversity. That's not inclusion. Again, we're just transitioning from one set of rules to another rather than actually expanding our capacity for difference, for disagreement, to have that uncomfortableness that does come. Oh, they said that, and I'm feeling really warm and flushed. I'm still safe, but I'm feeling really warm and flushed. Oh, do I want to ask them a question? Do I not just want to engage with them anymore? And go from there. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious as we start closing, how would you say, based on what I was talking about, social transitioning and kind of your longer experience of, being publicly a dyke and then becoming transmasculine, like how did that serve you in the long run, even though it was really painful then?
Well, I think just that, and it gave me a lot of time to explore and sit with how I wanted to be a masculine person. It gave me a lot of time to observe men and assist men, folks who were born and socialized as men. It gave me time to breathe through my sort of constant self-consciousness about my small hands. I mean, all of these things that when you and these are common narratives among trans masked people, the kind of the never enough man, and so the slowness of that and being kind of illegible for quite a few years before I started T. And even after that, I have such a baby face. Like people still think I'm 26. I'm like, bitch, I'm so old. I'm so old. I've been 26 for 17 years. It's like some Benjamin Button shit. I don't know.
Own it.
But it gave such I had to learn to relate to. I just had to learn to relate to it and be deeply uncomfortable. Not how are people going to read me? Can they read me? How are they seeing me? And then sit with whatever came up because that's what was that was my lived experience.
Hmm. I mean, that inner younger person in you at periods where you really wanted to pass must be reveling when you go onto Instagram and someone's like, this white cis guy should not be talking about trans people. It's not like the ultimate compliment.
Well, it's like, it just makes me laugh because I'm just like, in our conversation about spiritual, I was like, you don't even, like, you're not even in the atmosphere of, it's like, I would never fit into that shell. Like, it just feels like a shell of like, not even close, but good try, just amuses me.
Mm. Any final thoughts? Because I mean, there's 80 things I could bring in, but we need to start closing and going to our members and their questions and what's coming up. But I'm just curious, like, what's alive in us from this conversation? What are we feeling? What do we want to close with?
I want to
I
say,
just, oh, no, go ahead, Gray.
I just want to name, and this is similar to the thing around, sitting with those uncomfortable feelings that, yes, in the expression, and some of it sounds critical, but I want to say that I have grieved the loss of this community for years. So I like some of my, like, this isn't just about being critical or I'm right or I'm better than. Like Luis was talking about, like, I feel so open-hearted in this, and part of my open-heartedness comes from the fact that, like, I have been grieving the loss of this community for like 5+ years, and it has been a deep grief for me, and a kind of like, where do I belong? And so I want to name that as just kind of reference, and also to like let other people who might be experiencing that, because some of the reach out that I got after our episode, Luis, was like, you put to words something that I'm feeling that I don't know how to talk about.
Mm.
And that's really how it started for me. I remember I was just like, I don't really fit here anymore. This isn't like, but I didn't really know what was happening. So I like want to offer the the experience of grief in, like, it just was such a real part of my process. The community was such a loss for me, given how important it was for my survival for so long.
Let me feel it with you a minute, because that's exactly what's in my heart too. You know, when I was saying about disappointment, like being massively disappointed, that's where the grief came in with me. And it was 2018. I just remember like, oh, something changed and I didn't get the memo. And it felt like for the first time I felt left out in a space where I always felt included. And I was
Yes.
like, I'm the outsider. This was not, on my bingo card. Like I did not expect that. And it's been 7 years. I think this is the year I have actually stopped grieving. It is. That's why I'm able to talk about it out loud.
Yeah.
It was
Yep.
so tender. Like when Camille and I were going to talk about it, I was like, I'm just going to bawl through the whole episode,
Yeah.
like, which would have been fine too. But I just wasn't in that place. Whereas now I'm like, it's a lot of it has cleared. And now
Yeah.
I want to speak. And what's so fun about us speaking is there's this new lighthouse shining out toward the queers, the ones that don't fit in with the queers that are
Yep.
like,
We're
I want to
queerness.
come talk to you. I want to hang out with you. Can we talk? And it's like so relaxing
Yeah.
after the episode as well to get this influx of messages from people that are like, oh my God, transsexual man here, thank you. Or gay man here, I got your back, bro. Or like it was so nice. Oh, these are the same people from the 90s. We just got lost in all the yelling and the
Totally.
TikToks. Camille, what would you add as we close?
Um, so hearing you say queer also takes me to a place of, I guess, wanting to provide context for how things I've espoused over the last hour. I realized that I've transitioned just as an individual with several different marginalized identities, and then particularly as a DEI practitioner, from wanting a seat at the table to saying, fuck your table. I
Mm,
genuinely don't have a desire to have a seat at the table. I'm fully aware of the benefits I incur because of those who came before me who worked to get a seat at the table. And for me, part of the benefit is I now get to say, fuck your table. And so that really informs how I show up within my own marginalization, and then also how I relate to other people's experiences with marginalization.
mm, yeah. I'm gonna close with fuck your table. Like you enjoy that, sweetie. Not for me.
Yeah, that's good. I love it for you. That looks
That
fun.
table looks real good on you. That table matches your eyes, does not go with my eyes. You stay. Okay. Well, this has been fun, easy, beautiful. I felt my heart in many moments light up and cry out at times, and I really appreciate this. And I'm so grateful to have friends and colleagues who can go there and with an open heart, like who can really be open-hearted about it. That's what's so rare about this current experience, especially an online experience, is you have people that are either extremely hateful
Mm.
or extremely, all in, you can't question anything. And to have a middle place where, well, I can still love you and say I disagree with that is so rare to hear in this community. So I'm just grateful that we have this conversation for people. Thank you both. Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful, and let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next. If you want to learn much more about nutrition, especially through the somatic lens and how you can use food to recover from stress and trauma, there's really no better time than now, because I am about to lead a 6-month nutrition group that begins on July 8th. This group meets every week for 6 months, and I will teach you everything from somatic practices to help you be with the emotions that come up around dieting and food, as well as the nutritional biochemical component of protein, carbohydrates, fats, and how to understand instinctive eating in a way that nourishes your body instead of just soothing your emotions. When you bring somatic practices with nutritional ones, you get to eat for nourishment and then learn other ways to hold your emotions and tend to yourself instead of using food that could be detrimental to your health and your balance of your body. For more information about this group, please click on the link below in the episode details, and you have until July 7th to register. I look forward to seeing you in there. I have developed a 4-week self-paced course that takes 18 years of my personal and professional experience and puts it into one place where you can easily and quickly learn the foundations of recovering from stress and trauma. How does the food you eat affect your stress levels? How do the relationships in your life create stress or peace? How does the relationship you have with your body allow you to feel happier and more settled? I will cover all this and so much more in this 4-week self-paced course. And the best part, it's self-paced. You don't have to sign up at a certain date or finish it at a certain time. It's yours for life, and it's waiting there for you when you're ready to finish it. Throughout this course, I'll be teaching you philosophies and practices that combine my 3 favorite modalities: somatic experiencing, embodied parts work, and nutrition. For more information on this course, click on the link in my episode details.